What is happening, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Why Did I Buy a Mini Truck? Today we're going to be installing all the wiring harnesses that we went over in our previous video, and this should wrap up the series for installing our modified OEM style harness into the Nissan Hardbody. We're also going to be doing a few extra things, like making sure all of our grounds in our engine bay are good and all of the grounds are set up in the back for where the battery mounts. For those of you who don't know, the Nissan Hardbody has a grounding issue, I guess. A lot of guys upgrade their grounding wires, so we are going to make sure that we have everything set up, which is going to include our engine to our frame, our engine to our firewall, our transmission to the firewall, and our alternator to our frame. So we should have everything all set up here and hopefully have good connections, and that will ensure that our initial testing is all accurate. We don't have any surprises later on down the road. So as we install these harnesses, most of this is going to be on a time lapse, but I'll break it up so I can go over how we routed everything, how we secured everything up and out of the way, and where the connectors landed so that they're not only tucked but serviceable. Alrighty, so I went ahead and got the harnesses all ran in here. I did have you guys up on the GoPro, however, the footage was not good at all, and for half of it, my hat was in the way. So I'm just going to give you guys a rundown of the stuff that we got done on here. Some of the things we still need to do, like land our ground for our alternator, land our grounds for our engine, our transmission, and make sure that our power wire from our starter to our battery has a nice straight route. So over here, this is the passenger side headlight harness. So these are left a little bit long because we need to go ahead and trim them up depending on where we're going to land our turn signals and our marker lights. So the corners here we know that are going to be our marker lights. However, for our turn signals, we might be landing a different route and we may need to split this. So I'm going to leave it open, and then we'll have to go through and wrap it all up once we make our adjustments for our length. We do have a fender ground right here. This is just a drill and tap, worked out great. And then we just have our P-clips up here, keeping everything out of the way and away from the tire. On the other side here, I do have the harness ran. I'm just leaving it loose for now because I need to run the harness that comes through the cab and comes out into the engine bay for the coil packs in order to know where those plugs are going to land. And then inside here we have our main engine harness and our alternator and starter harness all run. So let me give you guys a closer look at how it's all routed. This main loom right here runs through here. This is for our injectors. It also has our temperature sensors, our pressure sensors, our ground for our water neck, and it does also have our TPS and our idle air control sensors on it. So I was actually able to use a bracket here. Now this bracket that these two are bolted to, this bracket here normally would house a vacuum sensor. So what I did was I took it off and I flipped it. We're not going to have that anymore, and I was able to use these to actually hold the connectors for these two sensors here, which is fantastic. So it keeps everything nice and tidy out of the way. I was also able to use it to hold this blocked off port right here. Now, I'm not sure 100% what this connector is used for, but it looked somewhat important, so I didn't want to get rid of it. I'm really a fan of how this all kind of lays out here. Now, you might notice, like, hey, there is a lot of labels on this harness and on stuff in here. Why do you have so many labels? The labels are there in case we need to remove everything and then reinstall everything. They will be cut off once we're done routing everything, and I like how it looks. There are actually labels underneath the tape. So for example, this one here that says injector 1, underneath here is another label that says injector 1. So it really will help later if somebody ends up needing to open the harness up for any reason, or if they are adding anything aftermarket, you'll be able to look in here, split the loom. Oh, hey, that's what this wire goes to. Fantastic. So this one might be a little harder to see, but we have our alternator power landed there. We have our plug and our ground hooked up. We do have our oil pressure switch right there, that's routed. And now this wire here that runs through, we have it secured with a clip, that is our starter signal connector, so that goes there. This harness then now runs back through here. It's gonna mount on this tab and this tab here on our intake. However, I'm waiting because this hose assembly mounts on those locations right there. So that's just kind of loose for now. We'll kind of make our way back under here. You can see where the starter is. Now that starter plug is actually tied up right there. You can see that zip tie in between that runner. We have it just sitting in there. It is nice and secure. We're not gonna have to worry about it. Now I do have a new coolant hose coming for here. So I just kind of have that hanging out. And now this harness kind of runs back and follows in here, joins this other harness, and then goes inside. There is another harness down there on the ground. You can see it. It is this black loomed one. This one I need to get under the truck for. That's going to run back to our transmission. That's going to be our reverse switch and also our sensor for something else. There's like another one on there, but I know for vehicle speed it uses the cable. So I'm not sure what those two sensors are for exactly, but figured they were important, so we might as well keep them. And now that we have everything run in the engine bay, we're going to come through here and we're going to start running out this harness for our cab and the outside of the driver's side footwell, where it exits and runs around and makes its way into the engine bay. So that'll be really exciting. I am going to put you guys on the GoPro for this one. I am going to make sure that the video looks good before we start, so I hope you guys enjoy this clip. And just like that, we have everything ran except for a few grounds in our engine bay. So I'm going to give you guys a rundown of where we have everything routed and some of the stuff that we're going to need to do in order to make this all work, as well as cleaning up certain areas of our build. So starting over here, we have our harness that runs through. This is our connectors right here for our headlight harness. And I went ahead and just put a little bit of foam back on them so that this way they don't rattle around on the outer fender skin. Have them route through here, come down there. They're plenty long enough, so we'll probably end up tying them back here, but I'm happy with how they turned out. And then we have our connectors here for our coil packs, our distributor, and also our O2 sensor. Now I did go ahead and run the brake level sensor right through here. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to redo our brake lines. You guys might notice they're flared out a little bit now. That is because they will not work with our wiper motor. So our options are to not run a wiper motor at all, or redo the brake lines, which I'm kind of okay with redoing the brake lines. There are a few things I want to go ahead and button up, maybe change a little bit, maybe not take up so much space on the firewall. So couple little things I wanted to address anyway, so this just happened to be the perfect occasion to go ahead and redo them. This was my first set of brake lines that I made completely from scratch, instead of just fixing or running a line from a port that already exists. So some little mistakes were made, but they were definitely be completely functional. But I don't mind starting over. This is why we buy plenty of extra when we do projects like this. So if we come inside over here, we have that fuse panel just kind of mocked up right there along with those relays. They're just zip tied in place. That's not where they're going to live, but for testing purposes, that's totally fine. Everything kind of connects back here. Now those are not where the connections are going to be. They're just where everything landed right now, and I'm fine with that for testing. So we have everything kind of run through here. The green harness is the harness that has our fusible links in it that go straight to our battery. We have our fuse, our ECU, not our fuse box, our ECU is right here. And we have our plug right here that runs out to our harness that runs underneath the truck, which goes to our taillights and our fuel pump, and then our taillight harness is also connected to that right there. So we'll be able to test our lights and our tag light, as well as check our connector to make sure we have power at our fuel pump. Now some of the things in here that are hanging right about here, those are all going to be for our climate controls, as well as our Deutsch connector down there, which is for our 12 volt source, which used to be for the cigarette lighter, but we're actually going to use that to power our switch panel. And so over here we have all of our wires that go to our gauge cluster. We do have our junction down here, as well as our fuse and relay panel there. Another little thing that we're going to have to change is the plug right here for the clutch neutral safety switch or clutch switch is different on this truck. Luckily I was able to save the one from our old harness right here, so we're going to go ahead and wire this one into here, and we won't have any issues with that. So once we go ahead and get everything tested, we're going to pull the whole harness back out in sections, and we're going to do some added preventative steps, especially to our engine harness. There are a couple spots I want to go ahead and thermal wrap. I know it is unnecessary, this thing isn't turbocharged. Honestly, it probably won't even be driven long enough to get close to overheating, hopefully, and I still want to go ahead and just make sure that we're not going to have any issues with heat in our harness, that we're not going to have any problems down the road with anything becoming brittle. So that's just an added step I want to do, nothing too crazy. Plus it'll add a little bit of color into our engine bay, which will be kind of nice. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is build the ground wires I need for the engine bay, and go ahead and land our ground wire and route it to our battery on the rear of the truck. Now there are a couple things I am considering maybe redoing. I need to do a little bit more research, but I'm hoping that us extending those wires that run to the fusible links aren't going to be a problem. We did add close to like 6 feet, so I'm hoping that we're not going to have an issue with those. Now if we do end up having some kind of issue where it keeps blowing those fusible links because it's too much length in here, what we can also do is run a thicker gauge power wire from the battery back this way, pretty close to the starter wire, if not the same route. And what we could do is we could land a positive lug somewhere in here that would be isolated obviously from the engine bay, that still provide a constant source from the battery. And then from there what we could do is then run anything that needs to go directly to the battery straight there, except for our starter, which will have its own separate wire. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is the last video as far as routing, the wiring and stuff goes. I'm not going to bore you guys with the fine details. However, once everything is tested and we get everything pulled back out and make our adjustments that we want to make, we're going to be having all of the supports in here for the dash. We're going to have our heater core back in, along with our blower motor setup and all of our HVAC piping. And then we can run our harness for the final time. Once that is done, I'll go over everything before we put the dash back in, so you can see how we routed everything, where everything landed, and how it all turned out in the end. So get out there, get those projects done, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.